Welcome back to another edition of the Good Eye Podcast. My name's Jay Smack, and here I have conversations with people in realms such as nonprofits, health, whether they are health practitioners or health enablers, health facilitators like my guest today. Veiga is a self-described queer ketamine nurse, and the idea behind this podcast was started to have conversations with people who are doing good in their community, whether that be through health or nonprofits, as I mentioned, and to also dive into subjects that I don't know a lot about because I'm a very curious person. I connected with T a few years ago when they were practicing, let me get this right, PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency, to sort of take themselves down a journey while detoxing Lyme bacteria, parasites, mold toxicity. And T has been on a journey to improve their own health. And now that they are a health practitioner themselves, have specialized in helping people from the LGBTQ plus community with their health journey. So we reconnected. T reached out and said that they have really landed in a really good place and would love to share their stories. So that's what we do. So that's what we're going to do today. I find it fascinating, all the different ways one can address their mental health and physical health for that matter. So here it is, my conversation with T Veiga, the Queer Ketamine Nurse, online at thequeerketaminenurse.com on today's Good Eye Podcast. All right, and welcome back to another edition of the Good Eye Podcast. I'm Jay Smack, and I'm excited to have as a guest today T Veiga. And am I pronouncing your last name correctly, T?
Yes, you got it right.
Just because of the spelling, V-E-I-G-A. So, and T, I'm going to kind of let you take the lead here because we connected several years ago. I believe specifically it was your mom that was sort of showing people the benefits of PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic field healing, which I had sort of heard about. And I know that you've had some experience with that. But since then, it's been a few years and your journey has taken you far and wide and on a lot of different growth arcs and experiences. It's a fascinating journey. And before we get started, I just want to say, that I am by no means a medical professional. I know that you are, but I'm not giving advice or suggesting anything to anyone because we're going to get into some pretty spicy topics, which I find absolutely fascinating. But I'm not recommending anything here. It's just you actually reached out to me to reconnect for the podcast. And this is sort of, one of two main reasons I really wanted to do something like this podcast. I mentioned in our pre-conversation, I'm just a monkey with a microphone. I've got some audio gear and I've got some broadcasting experience, and I believe in using my powers for good. So I like to have these kind of conversations. And the first kind is just to put positive stuff into the universe. So I focus on nonprofits and good causes. The other really is to have these really interesting conversations about subjects that, number one, I don't know that much about and I want to learn more about because I'm a curious person. And number two, these things you hear about and just don't know that much about. And I have to put our conversation today firmly in that column. And that is because you are known through branding and online as the Queer Ketamine Nurse. And ketamine, I don't know a lot about, but you'll educate us. But I know that it's being used more often to decrease sensitivity to pain, treat depression symptoms, things of that nature, and it's considered a psychedelic. But there's a lot of misconceptions about it. So I'm just going to turn it over to you to start and enlighten us on your journey, what brought you to this, and then we'll get into what exactly it is you're doing, who you're helping, and how ketamine comes into that, and whatever else bounces off the wall, we'll talk about it. So welcome after that lengthy intro, and how have you been? Tell us about your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate that beautiful intro. And I love how you said growth arc, right? Because I have many growth arcs throughout the course of my life. I am only 28, but I did start experiencing chronic health conditions actually from birth. I had some congenital, right, genetic defects. And then I got Lyme disease at age 9. And that just snowballed into a whole host of symptoms for about a decade. I did experience a large degree of healing from PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency healing, which is, yes, as we got connected through my mother and Dr. Deborah Drake. That's episode 37 of your podcast series. It's a good one. Go check it out. It seemed to help me immensely with clearing out the Lyme and clearing out other toxins in my system, right? I think that's a big element of health that people don't realize, right? Environmentally works. We can be exposed to moldy living environments. We can have, intestinal parasites, virus buildup, right? There's so many pathogens that I think need to get cleared out and detoxed from our system. But after I did that for several years, I reached this point in my healing journey where I was still struggling with so many mental health conditions, right? I had PTSD, I had intense suicidality, depression, treatment resistant depression, chronic pain, general anxiety. And I moved after I graduated college with my nursing degree from the #1 college in Virginia, Bon Secours Memorial College of Nursing. Shout out to that fantastic university. I was pretty lost. I said, I don't know how I can be a nurse. I don't want to be a nurse. I don't want to be a healer when I have so much on my soul still. Right. So I was searching. I went and I moved to Puerto Rico, and then I moved to South Lake Tahoe, just traveling the states, right? And ended up meeting a group of queer identifying, right, LGBTQ peers in Lake Tahoe who introduced me to the idea of ketamine. And the way that they described it was, they said that it is a very safe psychedelic that can help people with their mental health as well as their physical pain. And that was the kicker for me. I was like, those are my two, big blockages. And my curiosity was piqued. So I went to the only ketamine facility in town and started out with 2 sessions a week for 2 weeks, back to back. And within that time frame, I went through a breakup, and it was incredible how I saw, like, it was for the first time I saw, not only did I see these options, right, of like, hey, I can go home and I can wallow in self-pity and misery, or I can go hop on a bus and go to my doctor's appointment. I needed to get, some blood work done, a seemingly simple thing, right? And the bus actually, so I saw those choices and I said, you know what? I'm not going to do the same old thing that I know and that I'm used to, right? I'm going to go down a different path. I'm going to do something new, and I'm going to do something beneficial and healthy and good for myself. And that is a key element in which ketamine works in your brain. It's along the term neurogenesis, right? Which means new nerve growth in the brain. So your brain is so used to these wires, these signals going along that pathway in the limbic system, right? Your emotional regulation, your PTSD loop, right? Your fear center. And ketamine comes in, literally creates that new pathway that I was talking about. And it allows you to make those behavior changes, right? To then just kind of taking it step by step, right? Okay, following those behavior changes to eventually having a more holistic, well-balanced, healthy life. And I ended up just having this burst of motivation from that experience where I said, hey, okay, you know what? I'm going to stop procrastinating taking my nursing licensing exam. I'm going to study and work my hardest to become my best self. And nothing and no one's going to get in the way of that. And since then, it's been a little over 2 years. I am still a ketamine patient, and I have just reached this place of healing and harmony and joy and authenticity, right? And independence that I never like I could not conceptualize it, right, 2 years ago when I was in that dark hole. So here I am now, sharing my story, creating my brand as the Queer Ketamine Nurse, hoping to educate people, inspire people, bring people together, support them in their journeys, right? And I am just incredibly grateful for you, Jay, for the opportunity. You, like you said, you're taking your gifts, your skills, your talents, and I've got the information. I need to get it out there. So thank you so much for your channel. And I'm happy to, yeah, answer any more questions that come up here for us today.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's it's fascinating to me. Now I'm just curious, this from a personal standpoint, how aligned was your, say, your journey with how you identify from a gender standpoint and your discovery, for lack of a better word, of, say, the ketamine therapy? And on the back of that, what's the difference between ketamine? Why choose that versus, say, psilocybin microdosing or something?
Okay. So let's see. Which question would you prefer me to start with?
I'm curious, and again, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with it, I'm curious how closely related those two journeys
Oh,
really are
okay.
one, but because, do you feel like maybe part of those thoughts you were struggling with were part of discovering your true identity, or was it more or equally as much part of your mental health that perhaps the ketamine helped? So I'm just curious about
Yeah,
those two parts of your path.
that's a fantastic question. And what I will say is that I knew that there was something different about me and my gender identity and my gender expression since preschool, kindergarten. And right, I went to these private schools where you had to wear uniforms, and the options were right, boys wear shorts and pants, and girls wear skirts and jumpers. And I knew, hey, okay, I'm a girl, right, assigned female at birth, but I want to wear shorts and pants. I hate these jumpers. I hate these skirts, right? And throughout the years, right, I developed more, like I always had more of these sort of masculine interests or more masculine, um, like expressions. Tomboy, okay, whatever. And people trying to encourage me to become more feminine and thinking that if I just embrace my feminine side, that um, more people will be attracted to me as well. Like it was kind of this whole, a lot of societal programs
Yeah.
and such coming in. And it was a little before I moved to Tahoe that sort of, I was suspecting, okay, maybe there's something like a non-binary or a gender fluid identity. And then when I went to Tahoe and I met these fellow LGBTQ identifying folks, had a bunch of conversations with them, was like, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, no, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a lot of sense. I like this gender neutral, non-binary. That fits, and they them pronouns. Wow, okay, this makes sense going back to my whole life. However, yeah, well, I will say in the medicine, I saw it sort of progressively encouraging me, hey, okay, yes, T, like be your authentic self,
Okay.
right? You need
Okay.
to have these conversations with family members, with friends, and even in the workplace, right? So the ketamine really supported me. I would say like it didn't give me that insight of like, oh, this is who you are. It was like, yes, T, this is who you are,
Right.
and this is what you have to do with it, right? Let your
Be who
light
you
shine
are.
bright.
Be who you are, whoever you are, as opposed to, trying to go along to get along. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
unfortunately it's a common
Exactly.
refrain.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that, yeah, I love that question. Thanks for asking.
So again, just curiosity as we set up your bona fides and your qualifications. What was it uh, about ketamine versus other and people experiment in their own way, however they're comfortable, sometimes good, sometimes for ill, but versus say psilocybin or other forms of psychedelics, maybe it's not six of one, half a dozen of the other. It doesn't have to be. I'm just curious how you landed at ketamine, since you are now working with people to help treat depression and things of that nature with it.
Yes, great question. So I landed on ketamine because it is the only legal psychedelic on the market
Okay, well, that
today.
makes sense.
Yes, yes. I was like, hey, I don't want to do anything illegal. I don't want to risk my nursing license. I will say it has been classified as a Schedule 3 substance, which means there's a moderate to low potential for physical and or psychological dependence. It has been approved, so off-label use, right? It was initially used in surgery as well as in military combat back in the 60s, 70s, right? And then they realized, oh, okay, there is this off-label use for treating 16 different mental health conditions, which if it's all right, I can go through and kind
Yeah,
of list these off real quick.
yeah,
Awesome. So ketamine can be applied to treatment-resistant depression, major depressive disorder, general anxiety disorder, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, social anxiety, panic anxiety, substance use disorders, post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar depression, suicidality slash suicidal ideation, eating disorders, borderline personality disorder, chronic pain, adjustment disorders. There's a upcoming Parkinson's study actually. And then the last application is prophylaxis, which means preventative measures. So I just loved that it had this broad range, right? This umbrella of disorders that it can treat at the same time, and how effective it is, right? I found a study that said that ketamine is about 20% higher in terms of remission rates from anxiety and depression when compared to standard SSRI treatments. This one really is a kicker. It's 80% of folks had a remission from PTSD, and these stats are coming at 45% fewer side effects than standard SSRI treatments. And relief can last, like it can start anywhere from during the treatment to 24 days afterwards, and it lasts on average 30 days. So the science and the stats behind this mechanism are incredible and they're robust. And I just really want more people to be aware that this is an option. I'm not saying it's for everybody, right? There's several contraindications, right? If you have certain heart conditions, you're pregnant, breastfeeding, you have schizophrenia, severe kidney, liver problems, right? Those contraindications are in place, of course. And always consult your prescriber, right? I'm not a prescriber, so chat with your MD or chat with a ketamine specific MD about if you're a candidate, but I just want like more people to know that they can come to their doctors and they can say, hey, I'm curious about this other option. I'm curious about this alternative to these SSRIs, MAOIs, SNRIs, right? That can take weeks and weeks to kick in and they have high percentages of side effects. So that's a little bit on the why ketamine is so awesome and why I decided to choose. I will say too, comparing it to mushroom or other psychedelics, ketamine in general, right? I say everybody's experience is going to be a little bit different, but ketamine in general is a it's more gentle and subtle than quite a few other psychedelics. I have not explored, I mean, other psychedelics are illegal, at least so for me, nursing license, right? Haven't played around with them, so this is sort of anecdotal, and also what I've seen in some research, right? Is that some other psychedelics will kind of, they can kind of like slap you in the face, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And be like, hey, this is what you need to see, this is what you need to know. Come on, get it together, right? Whereas ketamine is a little more, hey, okay, um, here's a little download or a little mantra or an insight or a feeling or a shift in perspective on this topic that you've been ruminating on, right? So, sort of that gentle teacher kind of energy associated with this medicine, as opposed to like a really like kind of strict, harsh authoritarian that might come through with some other psychedelics.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned and stressed to have conversations with medical professionals. It kind of goes without saying, but we need to say it. People should, especially for the uses you're talking about, which is treating some of the symptoms and situations that you referenced. Now, with that in mind, what's the difference? You hear ketamine, and the popular thing is, oh, it's a horse tranquilizer. That's all I know. What's the difference between what you're talking about, say, from the ground up, from the street drug to you had mentioned using it in surgery, and the FDA approved off-label use? Specifically, what exactly is off-label? Does that mean illegal?
No, no, no. So off-label basically means that ketamine, what like is so on-label use of ketamine, right, is for use in surgery. But off-label means, hey, okay, like we weren't anticipating this
Like Ozempic.
secondary.
Yeah, Ozempic for weight loss, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
And I will say too, ketamine, so most people don't know, but I found a story detailing that ketamine is actually found in a fungus called Pochonia clemidisporia in the Brazilian rainforest. So this is another thing I like to stress to people, and it could help with any barriers, right? Because um, most people, right, the misconception is, oh, ketamine was just concocted in a lab by some scientist, and then it was applied to, you know, military like victims being helicoptered off of the battleground. They would give ketamine to help numb the pain and sort of dissociate from the experience. And then, okay, it was applied for uses in surgeries. And now it's being used in surgery as well as off-label use in these outpatient ketamine clinics, right? Or in the home environment, right? There are a couple companies that can give you a prescription to receive the medicine at home so you can take it on your own time in your own space, which I love, but we can get into that later. But I do just want to stress, okay, it is found in nature, so it should be treated like a sacred plant medicine, right? Like these other psychedelics. People like instead of using it, abusing it as a street drug, as a party drug, it needs to be given in like the same sort of indigenous respect, right? The rituals that indigenous communities would have where they would come together and they would bless the medicine, right? And they would share the medicine and they would listen, they would ask for insights or guidance or help, right? And they would receive the information and then they would integrate it into their lives. So I do want to encourage people to make their own ritual, even if you're not spiritual at all, like to just say thank you, right?
Mhm.
Like to hold the medicine for a second before you put it in your body and say thank you, right? But this setting an intention is important. This is not just willy-nilly, oh, let me just take some and see what happens. It's like, hey, okay, I'd like this to help with my depression, or I would like this, I'd like to focus on feelings of peace, right? And then seeing what comes up for you in the session, and then integrating it afterwards. So journaling and um, applying it to your life, as well as using, we call it the window of neuroplasticity. So 24 to 48 hours after that ketamine session is the most important time for a person to be doing like as many positive activities as you can for yourself, right? Because that will lock it in. It will lock those behaviors in. It will help to retrain your brain in that more positive direction.
That's really cool. I like how you put that, setting an intention rather than jumping in, maybe some bad vibes or something, or some trauma poking its head up. Set that intention and then do some gratitude work afterwards to lock it in.
Yes,
Um,
definitely.
Very cool. This is all fascinating stuff to me, and it's still pretty new. What implications do the newness of it have? Is there some backlash? Is there some resistance? First of all. Second of all, when the letters FDA come up, it sounds like it's nationally copacetic. Is that the case, or is it a state by state thing? Because we all know the state of, cannabis. Is it legal here? Is it not legal there? Is it legal to sell? It's legal to own, but it's not legal to do this. Where are some of those hurdles involved?
Yeah, so I like to break it down into four hurdles or gaps, right? Because I like to say I'm all about building bridges, right? So first gap I would say is awareness, right? A lot of folks don't know about ketamine, right, being safe and effective, and we got to spread the word, right? So that's what I'm doing here. There's a lot of other sources and channels, right, of sharing personal stories, right? Education, all that, all conferences, right? All that good stuff. That kind of ties into my second gap of how to, right? We need some more research studies. There's actually no treatment-based PTSD study for the LGBTQ population, which needs to change. We also need some more trainings for practitioners, right? Unfortunately, a lot of folks who are opening these ketamine clinics around the nation, which tying in to your question, it is legal in all 50 states, and there are a ton of ketamine facilities in all 50 states, as well as some states where you can get the lozenges shipped to you in your home environment. Um, so the tricky thing is, most of these folks who are opening these clinics have not had any experience with the medicine themselves. So there's a little bit, well, I'll say on that note, these practitioners, I don't feel that they can give the most authentic guidance without having had at least one experience themselves. So I do believe we need to have more trainings and workshops and experiential retreats and such, right, for practitioners so that they know a little bit more what they're talking about. Additionally, there are no defined parameters for initiating treatment. In general, the recommendation is 1 to 3 treatments for 2 to 3 weeks, and then having treatments every 4 to 6 weeks, spaced out for a few months. And then from there, okay, maybe once every other month, once every 6 months, like the booster. So the initiation, it's not set in stone. as a parameter, as a guideline, and then the follow-ups and the boosters from there are not, set in stone. Like it's all, I mean, it's great to have a bit of flexibility, but it's also like, oh man, like I've seen some people have a damaging experience because the person had them sit for 2 hours in their first journey, in their first psychedelic space, and that was too much for the person, right? So I would love to see more standardization of care. Um, Additionally, access, right? There's a bit of a money grab happening, right? A lot of folks who are opening these ketamine facilities, they're charging five, six, $700 per infusion out of pocket, and that's not affordable to folks. There are two options for insurance covered routes, right? You have the Spravato, which is the intranasal. Most major insurances cover that. However, well, sorry, I'll get into the other one. The lozenges, there are two companies, the Anywhere Clinic and Mind Bloom, that are doing that, yeah, the at-home lozenges. So those two, it's great that they're covered by most insurances in most states, but those two routes are not as effective as the intramuscular intravenous route, which I would love to see get covered by insurance as well in the future. And then the last gap or the last area of improvement I would say is discrimination, right? There is still a huge society like shift in societal acceptance towards psychedelics that it's coming, it's starting up, it's gaining momentum. But the more that we share our stories, the more that we share these facts, and the more that we build community, right? That I do believe that discrimination and those misconceptions are going to slowly dissipate. So that's part of why I'm here doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot to take in there. Um, I'm
Yeah.
curious how much, say, Big Pharma is involved in something like this, and whether this question is rooted in the knowledge that in the West, we tend to throw a pill at everything for pain, beta blocker, whatever it is. This is sort of not, I don't want to say it's along those lines, but it is now being regulated and circulated as a medication. How much involvement is Big Pharma having in this world, in this realm, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I would say the only like arm, I guess I would say, of Big Pharma that I am aware of at this stage is in relation to what's called Spravato. So Spravato is the name that they have branded for intranasal ketamine, and it there's a site you can go to. I forget, I wrote the name down somewhere, but there's a site you can go to where you can look up the different Spravato clinics around the nation. And I will say I have gone to a couple like speeches that have been put on by Spravato to, gain more information about this exact question. And I've been quite impressed actually that of the studies that they have a 5-year study with just some great data showing the few side effects, showing how few people stop because of the side effects, showing the rates of remission and sustained remission. So I will say it seems to me as if they are like, I really like how um, they are helping like people access the medication, right? How they are taking most insurances and they're really getting it out there. Um, I don't really see like I'm not really, yeah, I'm not sure moving forward into the future what it's going to look like. I mean, well, I will say Spravato, like they're not trying, they're not trying to get people to do this like every single day, right? It's like they even said a little goes a long way on
Hmm.
multiple occasions at the last conference I went to, right? So they're having these parameters of frequency of initiation and frequency of boosters, and then they are yeah I feel like they're sorry, I'm kind of rambling. Basically, I feel like they're working on setting some standards. There's good data. It's helping people. It doesn't seem problematic at this stage, but there are some worries from folks in the community that it could lead to some problems down the line. Like basically, there are some folks, and like I mentioned, right, with some of these outpatient clinics being run by people who've never experienced the
Yeah.
medicine,
Hmm.
right? There are and then charging a ton of money for accessing. Right. So there are some concerns in the community that big pharma or these other outpatient clinics, like they're saying they're kind of blocking, right? They're blocking some of these um, patients who really need the medicine by charging too much, making it inaccessible, or with Spravato, they're not covering the intravenous or the intramuscular, which are the most effective.
Hmm.
So I hope that kind of made sense
Yeah.
altogether.
Yeah, it does because when something works, it either gets shut down so a larger institution can take it over, or it gets taken advantage of and exploited. Not always, but and it needs to be said that as much problem as people have with big pharma, it has led us toward a lot of pain relief, a lot of breakthroughs with other medicines. It just when I think when the profit motive is there, it gets a little sketchy as to whose best interest is being taken into account.
Mhm.
You mentioned some events and conferences, and I know have you been doing retreats or you have retreats planned? But I know you have some of that stuff coming up. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So, a couple things that I have coming up in order. I actually am going to be doing my first workshop for professionals, like the workshop slash retreat for professionals. It's actually going to be a hybrid event, so it'll be in person in Las Vegas at NAMI, Southern Nevada, National Alliance on Mental Illness. I'm renting a room from them. Saturday, May 24th from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. And that will be, focusing on helping practitioners learn a little bit more. What does queer mean? Um, Tiny bit about what ketamine is, because we're sort of assuming they already have ketamine shops open or they have ketamine patients, and then spending a good chunk of time on how can we as providers make our LGBTQ identifying clients feel more comfortable, feel more accepted, prove our allyship, change our paperwork, things like that. Right. So that's the first thing coming up Saturday, May 24th. And then secondly, I have and I just got booked for this, so this is very exciting. The MAPS Psychedelic Science Conference in Denver. It's going to be the largest one in history, the largest like gathering of psychedelic folks in history, June 16th through 20th. I'm going to be on a panel with several other queer psychedelic leaders. So super, super stoked for that.
Wow,
And
congratulations.
then thank you, thank you. The last one is going to be a Las Vegas psychedelic convention, October 17th at 10 a.m. And that one's going to be Ketamine 101. I did also actually, on that note, Ketamine 101, I wrote a little book titled that. Well, no, yeah, it's on Amazon, paperback and PDF. So if what we've talked about today piques your interest at all, uh, please check out that book. It's a very easy read. It's colorful. There are some charts that can help you in your journey and just, expand on some of these questions. There's a ton of resources and research articles that I used in there. So I think that's a great place to start for folks instead of, doom scrolling on the internet or
Right.
trying to, just listening to your neighbor who heard that it's a horse tranquilizer, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, with some of that stuff in mind, a pure nuts and bolts question is, and that is, you're concentrating on the LGBTQ community for now. Do you think you're going to stay concentrated on those folks for specific reasons because you relate to your journey, or do you see it expanding as maybe the word gets out? It seems very specific, which is perhaps maybe exactly what it should be.
Yes, I am niching down. I am focusing on LGBTQ identifying clients only. I will say right now, when I do tabling events, there have been a couple times when a person comes to me and they're really desperate and they are an ally. I will express openness to working with them, but really queer ketamine is my niche, and I'd love to throw some stats out there as to why, if that's okay.
Yeah, bring it on. I have to qualify my question real quick. It's because I work with an organization that originally started helping only single mothers in crisis, and they found that there was such a need that they opened it up to males and females and people of other communities. So I was just curious about that. Yeah, but throw us some stats.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really want to specialize,
Mm-hmm.
I want
Mm-hmm.
to specialize and I want to be that person who like in the future, there's some like queer identifying celebrity who's like, I need a really good sitter and one that is gay too. And okay, T,
Mm-hmm.
Nurse T, queer ketamine nurse, they're the ones, right? But there is such a need, right? And I want to do as much as I can to decrease these statistics because unfortunately, queer folks are more than twice as likely as, heterosexual, cisgendered folks to have a mental health disorder in their lifetime. And when we break that down a little further, when we look at suicidal attempts, it's 14 times as many and rates of depression are over 5 times higher amongst trans people and 3.5 times higher than lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. So we are suffering
Mm-hmm.
disproportionately.
Mm-hmm.
There's no, PTSD focused research. And I found another interesting stats that say that we have higher rates of using mental health services than our straight cisgendered counterparts. So the need is there, like we're suffering disproportionately, and we are ready and willing to use the mental health services if they're available. And I just want to help make them become more available, like, more aware that this is an option and then more accessible, right, to the medicine.
Those are great points, and it reminds me of an anecdote we talked about before we did the podcast a few weeks ago about that Canadian official who was asked, "What do what do you attribute the rise in people identifying differently, as far as their gender identity or gender expression?" And he's like, "There's not a rise. It's just before people were afraid to say anything about it or seek help or seek resources. Now they're not as afraid and they're not taking their own lives. So if that's not a win, but people sort of process information through their own filters. So it's not always, but I totally get what you're saying. And I think it's admirable that you want to focus on the community with the greatest need.
Thank you. And you touched on a great point. Like there are so many factors, um, like influencing, right, queer identifying people, right? You have these societal, cultural, religious, um, judgments or fears of violence, fears of rejection, fears of judgment, feelings of shame, right? There are so many negative and heavy emotions and influences on being a queer identifying person. And I do believe ketamine is one of those mechanisms. You know, I'm not going to say it's the only one, right? Because it's going to look different for each person, but it's a fantastic mechanism helping to peel back those layers of what we experience to a higher extent, right? It's peeling back those layers in a gentle and beautiful way for the most part. And leading towards more authentic lives, stepping out of the closet, right? Being liberated, empowered, connecting with others, living your most joy-filled, authentic life. I will say there is a lot of like the wave of fear um, has definitely been coming back here, at least in the United States, in the past couple months because of
mhm.
some administration that is being pushed through the government right now, specifically, you know, trying to banning, gender affirming care for those under the age of 19, removing the non-binary option on the passport, um, removing the cessation of conversion therapy in a lot of states. Like there's a lot of really scary changes that are happening in our states right now, and that, going back into the closet and staying invisible and trying to protect yourself and isolating, like that energy and that force and that fear, unfortunately, is starting to grow again. So it's even more important, it's even more imperative that I'm out here sharing this message and doing this work and fighting for protections and safety and the health and wellness of my community.
Yep. Okay. Well, that I love how you brought that all full circle, and I agree that openness is absolutely imperative. Just as far from an empathetic and perspective point of view, things that may not affect person B directly greatly affect person A, and sometimes we don't make progress when it comes to being empathetic and helping others until it affects us directly. And sometimes we can't wait for that. The stakes are just too high. So, thanks for doing the work you're doing. I do want to touch briefly on something you brought up earlier, the PEMF. And are you
Mhm.
still doing that? Is that still a part of your life, and you're finding benefits in it? Because as an audio guy, the whole vibration and frequency thing always fascinates me. I don't quite get it. And I think I tried it with your mom briefly, but I haven't really, given it the old college try, as it were. But is that something that's still part of your life?
Yes, it is. Actually, I did a program last night. I have switched, so I think in that call we focused mainly on the amp coil, which was a pretty
Mm-hmm.
large box with a a ring, like a 5 pound ring that you put on your body, that emits a basically if you think of a fan, right? When it's slowing, when it's rotating slower, you can see, okay, the physical blades, right, going around, but it's not really generating much of a current of an effect on your system. But when you turn it up higher, you cannot see the blades anymore, but it is affecting you and your system further, right? You're actually feeling the breeze stronger. So amp coil works in that same sort of way. with physics, right? And so does this little Healy I'm working with, Healy. I've switched to just using that primarily because it is very small. You can actually wear it and it works through Bluetooth. So you go on your phone and you program. I mean, there's literally tens of thousands of programs that you can do, because it also has a biofeedback mechanism where it scans your energy and it tells you this unique combination of frequencies of hertz at different levels and at different strengths. And it just like it makes just this perfect little vortex formula for you and your energy system. So yeah, I do still use that a couple days a week, and I love the flexibility of it and the individualization of it. And yeah, it's definitely been a pal still, but I think it's wise to have multiple tools, right, in our toolkit. So I'll always encourage people, right? Although my big ones are ketamine and PEMF, and another person's could be, massage and
Hmm.
acupuncture,
Yeah.
or mushrooms and um, yoga, right? Whatever your intuition pulls you towards. And it could be different chapters of your life, right? So that's another thing I do want to stress to people, that if you're interested in ketamine, but you don't have insurance right now, or you don't have the money for out of pocket, put a pin in it. Maybe it'll come back around to you in your life one day. I'm wondering if we might have some time to touch on a little bit of like the science behind, like kind of expanding more on how ketamine is working in your brain.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. I should
So,
add though, along that line of thinking of finding your thing, finding your vibe.
mhm.
I mentioned audio, and that's definitely part of my vibe. As whether it's singing bowls or
Mm,
shruti frequencies and tones, or even brown noise, things like that. I find that works for me, but not to get off topic.
nice.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, or like some binaural
yeah,
beats,
exactly.
or yeah, I love a good singing bowl, tuning forks, right? I'm thinking of incorporating those into my workshop at some point, and I do want to do retreats in the future. Um, and I just love, yeah, I love the tuning forks, the PEMF. Um, yeah, oh, good stuff. Well, so kind of, yeah, switching gears on ketamine, I do want to touch base. Like, I know I mentioned the neurogenesis, right? The new cell growth, new pathways in the brain. Alongside that comes increased brain lobe communication, right? So getting these different centers and these different chemical messengers, neurotransmitters, getting them on the same page, helping them to work together, right? Um, a couple different pathways specifically that it's helping. Limbic system, right? So that fear center, amygdala, emotional regulation, decision making, right? That is heavily regulated and influenced with ketamine. So is the default mode network. That is the area of the brain, or the network of communication between different lobes and structures, having to deal with a person's stuck ruminating thoughts, right? And self-referential thought patterns, right? So how we tell our story, how we're thinking about things, right? Ruminating in sort of a cyclical pattern of thought. DMN, with the help of ketamine, like it can break that up and it can help you sort of let things go a little easier, or bring in that mantra, right? Bring in that insight from the ketamine trip when that referential thought comes up, or when that ruminating thought comes up. You can like that mantra or that memory from that session will come up and be like, oh no, okay, let it go. Or hey, okay, that wasn't this place wasn't where I got verbally attacked by a security guard. It was a place where I stood up to a bully, right? That's something from my personal life that I've seen. Additionally, so neurotransmitters. there are two major ones that ketamine if affects, glutamate and dopamine. So glutamate has to do with the learning center of your brain, memory, cognitive function, and dopamine has to do with, right, reward, pleasure, mood, and motivation. So last and not least, there are two anti properties I like to say. One, anti-inflammatory, right? That has to do with the pain disorders that we touched on earlier, and then anti-parasitic, which is very interesting. I found a study that said that ketamine actually had the same efficacy as ivermectin in terms of eliminating parasites. So very cool stuff. I love to just explain these 2, 4, 6, 8, 8 different applications or topics for the how and for the science behind ketamine doing its thing in your system.
Nice. Yeah, examples, empirical evidence, all that stuff. Very helpful, and it gives people perspective and gives them an anchor to hang on to, as opposed to all this conceptual stuff they've never experienced, don't know anybody who's experienced it. So that's very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, T, this is fascinating. I'm looking over my notes. You've covered everything I was thinking about, including talking about your book, of course, and I'll put links for that on the website at goodipodcast.com. Your book, your website, which is the queerketaminenurse.com, and the other podcast you were on. You gave me a Spotify link. I'll throw that up there too. But is there anything we haven't hit or talked about that you wanted to bring up before we kind of wrap it up?
Let's see. Going through my notes as well, I think that, I guess the last thing that I would love to touch on is, so I know we touched on where I've been in the past, where I'm at right now, but moving forward, going into the future, I do want to share that I am hoping to live nomadically in the future, traveling around the States, potentially the world, doing speaking events, retreats, virtual coaching, teaching, experiential, for practitioners and clients, right? Just all things queer ketamine around the world, building bridges. So if you feel, called or inclined to connect with me, I do have a free 20-minute connecting call on my website. You can book it and we can chat. I've also got my book on Amazon. Thank you for putting the link out there. We'll put my website there too. And I hope to see some folks at these conferences and speeches and workshops that I'm doing as well. So yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And thank you, Jay, for hosting and asking such great questions and just holding the space and helping to promote and get the word out there. It really, really, really means a lot to me. So all the thanks, lots of gratitude.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your engagement. Holding the space is absolutely what this is about. And your future nomadic lifestyle, that sounds really interesting. I am fascinated by that. I follow quite a few of those folks on various social media. This is one called the Truck House Life. This guy is in Alaska, and the whole overlanding thing of people are getting stir crazy these days. They're looking for something. They don't know where to find it, so they head out on the road and try to make a difference. So best of luck to you in making that a reality.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Yes, I hope to be on land and on sea. I'll just leave it at that.
Wow. All right, cool. Keep us updated. And we had talked about, I don't remember how we got on it, but we were talking about hardcore last time. I mean, hardcore music, punk. And you had asked me for some references, and I'm a bit older than you. That goes without saying. But some of the other names I wanted to throw out there to you, Minor Threat, Dead Kennedys, Circle Jerks, Black Flag, Misfits, Bad Brains are from D.C., you had actually emailed me and I never got back to you. Descendants is another one. Some of those bands are still out there, jamming a Kano. Speaking of which, the Minutemen and and Husker Du, they're not so much hardcore, but they were in that scene. So anyway, there's some playlist fodder for you. It kind of dates me. I grew up a young metalhead and hardcore fan. So there you are. Do with that information what you will.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Yeah, I'll look into it. It's kind of funny, when I was going through the Lyme, and then middle school, high school is when I started exploring a bit of that music style, because it was like, oh wow, okay. There are people I can relate to, feeling heavy feelings and emotionally expressing, and being in community at concerts, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is me, these are my people. And over the years, really since my healing, with the PEMF and the ketamine, I've seen that the time that I spend listening to that music has decreased, and it's sort of grown to a point where I developed a playlist. I call it Anger Dance, right? So when I am feeling a certain extent of anger, and I need to move through it, right? Like feel it, don't deny it, feel it, move through it,
That's right.
experience it, let it out, right? I will play the Anger Dance playlist with some metal, some hardcore, little, screamo, heavy rock, and I will move my body. If I'm out in a forest somewhere, I'll pretend that I'm in a mosh pit with the trees, and then of course other times, right, I've got a repeat daily playlist, right, of some more like, okay, gentle or positive, or good lyrics and words. On the note, actually, I just had a thought come through. During a ketamine session, it's good to not listen to music with any lyrics. So, right, some of the singing bowls, binaural beats, animal sounds, ocean waves. There's a great app, Insight Timer, that has a bunch of different options there. So that's a good little connection to the audio, music ketamine bridge as well. I forgot to mention.
Super cool. I love that insight. And as far as those feelings, acting on those feelings, then there's a lot of crossover here into Eastern philosophy and meditation. When it comes to anger, sadness, any of that, it deserves just as much attention. And by not giving it attention, you're just making it angrier. Give it attention, love it, embrace it, see it for what it is. Otherwise, it will hide in the shadows and strike when you least suspect it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Beautifully said. I agree.
Well, T, this has been a blast. Please keep in touch. I'll put the links on the website. And let me know how things go. I'd like to continue to follow your journey, and best of luck with everything. It's amazing what you've done.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jay. Yes, it's been a lot of fun creating my niche. And we'll definitely keep in touch, and follow, who knows, maybe there'll be another podcast later down the line, or collaboration in some other way. I love building bridges and connecting like-minded folks. So potentially throwing you some of my connections in the psychedelic space, or in just the mental health space here in Vegas, and building a bridge between Virginia and Nevada.
Sounds good. Well, thank you. Thank you once again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much, Jay. You rock. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you, T. Absolutely. And for more on the Queer Ketamine Nurse, it's at the queerketaminenurse.com. That's KETAMINE nurse.com. The link to the book is up there. The last podcast we were talking about is up there. And if you have anything for me, please reach out, jay@jsmack.com. Interesting conversations always welcome here at the Good Eye Podcast. So thanks. And until next time, thank you very much for your time, attention, and intention.